had like the little yellow flag. Are those the markers you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. What do y'all do next?
After all the photographs have been Yes.
Okay. And does it appear from that packaging that it has been maintained since the scene and not been tampered with in any way?
Yes.
Would move to admit Commonwealth 71 into evidence.
Let me chat up here. Introduced.
Thank you.
I'm a little confused because I can't see the screen as well as you all can, but advice to the jury. It's a little bit confusing when the CSU technician, in the course of what they do, they call something Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2. That's different than our in the courtroom Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, so be mindful of that. The Commonwealth's motion to introduce Commonwealth Exhibit 71, which is the sweatpants that are in the exhibit envelope, without objection introduced.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you would you remove those from the envelope?
Some more advice for the jury. Remember I said that everything that's introduced into evidence will come back to you in the jury room. That includes evidence like these sweatpants, and each of these items that are retrieved or collected at the exhibit scene may have some type of bodily fluid on it, dried blood. You'll notice that the evidence technician is utilizing rubber gloves to retrieve those. That's for safety reasons. If you wish to look at those exhibits closely back in the jury room, the court will provide you with a box of rubber gloves that you should use if you're looking at the exhibits. My suggestion to you is have one person be the person who pulls stuff out, just to minimize contact with it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Together, we'll talk about your all's item number 3 and marker 2. What was your item number 3?
Exhibit number 3, marker.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It is as confusing as the judge said.
Yes. Our exhibit number 3, which is marked in the photographs of marker number 2, is a red and silver Marlboro brand cigarette pack, which was also located in the grass behind Liberty High School.
Your Honor, I'm handing the witness what I've generally marked as Commonwealth 72. You can identify that, please.
Yes, it's marked exhibit number 3, cigarette box.
And has that been maintained pursuant to all policies and procedures as well?
Yes.
Would move to admit Commonwealth 72, please.
Any objection?
Oh, Your Honor.
Introduced.
You could, with the court's permission, show that to the jury, please. I'm going to put up on the screen Commonwealth's 12. Is this that same pack?
Yes.
what is the next item that you collected?
We then collected exhibit number 4, which is also our marker number 2, a white TARC receipt that was located in the grass next to exhibit number 3.
Your Honor, I'm marking it Commonwealth 73. And has that been maintained according to proper policy and procedure?
Yes, it has.
I would move to admit Commonwealth 73 into evidence.
Any objection?
Oh, Your Honor.
Introduced.
Will you, with the court's permission, publish that to the jury, please? Thank you. What was the CSU exhibit number 5?
5 was a purple, green, and white White Owl brand cigar package, which was marked in the photos as our exhibit number 3.
What did you call it, a cigar package?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And up on the screen is Commonwealth 13. Is that the item that we're talking about?
Yes, it is.
Commonwealth 74. Because the witness has testified that all of these items have been maintained pursuant to CSU policy and procedure, I would move to admit 74 into evidence and ask for permission to publish.
Any objection?
Oh, Your Honor.
Introduced.
If you could please, Ms. Gutterman, show the jury. What is the CSU item number 6?
Exhibit number 6, which is marked in the photos as our marker number 4, is a unopened Kroger brand plastic water bottle.
Your Honor, move to admit and publish Commonwealth 75 into evidence.
Any objection?
Oh, Your Honor.
Introduced.
If you could please show that to the jury. And up on the screen, is this where that water bottle was?
Yes.
Thank you. What was your exhibit number 7?
Exhibit number 7, which in the photos is marked as marker number 5, is a silver and red Three Musketeers candy bar wrapper.
Your Honor, I would move to admit and publish Commonwealth 76 into evidence.
Any objection?
Oh, Your Honor.
Introduced.
Please show it to the jury. Now, I'm going to skip your CSU exhibits 8 through 16 for a moment. We'll get back to those. I want to continue with the physical evidence that was collected and that's here. What was your exhibit number 17?
Exhibit number 17, which in the photos is marked as marker number 10, was a rusty-colored blade that was located in the creek under the tunnel bridge.
Your Honor, I move to admit and publish Commonwealth 77.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Introduced.
You would publish it, please. What was CSU Exhibit 18?
18 was a red lighter that was removed from the right front pocket of the victim's pants.
Move to admit and publish Commonwealth 78.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Introduced.
And from where was that collected?
That was collected from the right front pocket of the victim's pants.
What was the CSU Exhibit 19?
19 was a blue and silver a blue and silver pocket knife that was removed from the right front pocket of the victim's pants.
That same pocket?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, Commonwealth 79. Move to admit and publish.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Introduced.
What was the item, Exhibit 20, that was collected at the scene?
Exhibit 20 was 6 coins, totaling $1, and it was removed from the front right pocket of the victim's pants.
Were those coins maintained in the property room?
Once they were entered into the property room by us, they were then deposited into the bank by the property room clerks.
Is that the common practice with money that is found on scenes?
Yes, as long as the money is not of any evidentiary value, then it does get deposited.
So does that happen in other cases as well?
Yes.
And is that what was done in this case?
Yes.
Okay. What is your Exhibit 21?
21 is a green, purple, and yellow lanyard that was removed from the front right pocket of the victim's pants.
Your Honor, move to admit and publish Commonwealth 80.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Introduced, if I didn't say that. Sometimes I forget to say it.
And those again are in the same pocket as the lighter and the coins in the pocket knife.
Yes.
All in the front right pocket.
Yes.
And finally, your Exhibit 22, CSU's Exhibit 22.
It is a black and blue cell phone that was removed from the right front pocket of the victim's pants.
Your Honor, move to admit and publish Commonwealth 81, please.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Introduced.
Thank you. addition to photographing, filming, and collecting evidence, is that you process some of the evidence.
Yes.
How do you process evidence for fingerprints?
It depends on the type of evidence that we have, but we will superglue the evidence, and then once it's been fumed, we will then apply either magnetic powder or just basic powder to it to let the print come out. If we also can use chemicals as well to possibly develop a latent print.
Okay. And did you process any items that you collected at the scene for fingerprints?
Yes, we did.
Which ones?
We processed exhibit number 3, which is the cigarette pack. We also processed exhibit number 5, which is the cigar package. Exhibit number 6, which is the water bottle. And exhibit number 7, the candy wrapper.
And were you able to collect any prints, usable or identifiable prints from any of those?
No, we were not.
Can you explain to the jury a little bit about fingerprints as far as how they are left and what allows you to collect them?
Yes.
Can we approach the bench for this?
Yes.
Thanks.
Ms. Gutterman, in your time at CSU, have you received training on fingerprints, how to collect them, how to test for them, and received information about how they're left?
Yes.
In your, I guess, 6 years at CSU, have you learned through the course of your employment and continuing education, have you been trained on fingerprints?
Yes.
And can you, if you know from your training and experience, can you explain to the jury a little bit about fingerprints, how they are left and how they are collected?
Yes. Your fingerprints have oils in them, and when you touch a surface, those oils are left behind. It also just depends on how much a person sweats out those oils. Some people may not sweat as much as others, so you're not going to leave behind any prints if you don't sweat the oils out.
Does the time of year or the environment of the surface that you are trying to print, does that affect whether prints are likely to be left and collected?
Yes.
How so?
It just, if you have, whether it's cold weather or hot weather, people tend to sweat more in the summertime, so they may leave more oils behind, or in the wintertime, it could just be the opposite.
And what about the surface that you're talking about? Does it make a difference if it's a smooth or almost shiny surface as opposed to a textured surface?
Yes, you have the smooth surface and the textured. Many ridges that are in your fingertips don't tend to develop on textured prints as they do on the smoother surfaces.
Okay. And then what about, if you know from your experience, what effect does multiple touching of an object, what effect does that have on being able to collect prints?
You will have overlapping in the ridges, which then identification is very hard to make at that point.
So if we're talking about, say, someone's car door, the fact that it is smooth, it sounds from your testimony, would be beneficial to collecting prints. Is that correct? Because it's a smooth surface?
Yes.
But the fact that people close a car door over and over and over again, and perhaps multiple people close the car door over and over and over again, that would make it more difficult to get prints.
Yes, that, and also the fact that you have the smudging, which a lot of people, when you touch something, you may not perfectly touch it, but if you touch it and move your fingers, you have that smudge, which in the identification at that point is very difficult to make.
Okay. And as you stated before, despite attempts, you were not able to collect fingerprints from any of those items that you all processed.
Correct.
Now, I'd like to talk to you, we skipped a number of items when we were talking about the exhibits that you all collected. And I'd like to talk to you about CSU exhibits 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Can you explain to the jury what those exhibits were?
Those were swabs of possible blood from different areas of the scene.
And were there marker numbers that coordinated or matched up those items?
Yes, marker 5 through 9.
5 through 9. Okay, so if I'm showing Commonwealth's 20 up on the screen, are these the markers you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you collect, what is the process, I guess, for swabbing for possible blood?
If the blood has dried, we always use a Q-tip, kind of like a long cotton swab. If the blood is dry, we then apply distilled water to the tip of it and then wipe up the blood. If the blood is wet, we will just wipe it up.
And how many swabs of possible blood did you collect at this scene?
We collected 8.
Okay. And were they all from the areas that are marked by 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't believe 8 is on here, so I'll show you Commonwealth's 25. What was CSU Exhibit 16?
2 control swabs.
What are control swabs?
Control swabs are for the state lab if they were to need it. It is a swab as is with nothing being applied to it.
And do you take, or I guess submit, control swabs at every scene where you take any other swabs?
We do collect control swabs at every scene, yes.
Okay. All right, so I think we've gone through 1 through 22. Just to be clear, the CSU Exhibit 1, what was that?
CSU Exhibit 1 was a videotape of the scene.
Okay. CSU Exhibits 2 through 7 have been admitted, and then 8 through 16, those were all swabs?
Yes.
And then 17 through 19 have been admitted. 20 was the coins,
Correct.
and your testimony was those were deposited.
Yes.
And then CSU Exhibits 21 and 22 have been admitted into evidence.
Yes.
Okay. Did you do any other processing of any items back at CSU after you collected them? We've talked about the items, the 4 items that you processed for prints. Did you do any other processing?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did any items have to be placed in the drying cabinet?
Yes.
Which ones had to be placed in the drying cabinet?
We placed the cell phone, which was exhibit number 22 in the drying cabinet.
Okay.
We also placed the exhibit number 17 in the drying cabinet, which was the blade.
The one that had been in the water?
Yes.
Okay. Do you, as a CSU technician, a crime scene technician, do you have anything to do with the processing of any bodily fluids, blood, or any sort of touch DNA, or any other bodily fluids to determine DNA or blood type or anything like that?
No, not actually blood type. All I do is the collection.
Okay. And you mentioned taking items to the property room, and you also mentioned taking items to the KSP lab.
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what the KSP lab is?
Yeah, it's a Kentucky State Police lab, and there's 2 different labs. We have a central lab, which is in Frankfort, and a local lab, which is here just off of Chamberlain Lane. They are analysts that can determine the different type to develop a profile through the DNA.
And were the swabs specifically, were those taken to the lab in this case?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Gutterman, you've been working with CSU.
Yes.
And were you a police officer before you went to the crime scene?
No, I was not.
Remember to keep your voice up.
No, I worked in dispatch prior to CSU. I've been with the department for 12 years now.
You worked with other crime scene unit technicians that day.
Yes, I did.
Your job description is technician.
Yes,
Technician means that you gather up evidence
correct.
and usually at the scene of the crime.
Right.
The police department is set up with a chain of command. Is there a chain of command?
Yes.
Are you working under the direction of Detective Russ?
I was working with the detective. Mike Perry was on scene with me, so we were working together.
When you arrived at the scene, did you see Detective Maroney?
She was there at some point, yes, because I have her on my report. I can't recall at what time that was.
Can you remember any conversation that you may have had with her?
I don't recall.
Do you remember whether she walked the scene with you?
That for the scene video?
I'm sorry. Walked the scene, not with the video, but thereafter when the scene was being processed. Still photographs, etc.
I do remember that she did walk through the tunnel, yes.
Was she walking through the area with you?
Not during the scene video.
Okay.
That was Detective Perry. If she was in the scene, I'm not aware of that because I was concentrating on photographing and collecting the evidence.
How many other crime scene unit technicians were with you that day?
It was myself and 2 other techs.
Do you have a specialized truck that you take when you respond to a crime scene?
Yes.
Does that truck have equipment in it to facilitate you doing your job to collect evidence?
Yes.
You have a video camera
Yes.
that's always with the truck?
No.
You always take it to the crime scene with you?
Yes.
And you have some digital cameras as well?
Yes.
Did you just have one digital camera with you
No.
that day?
Each technician has their own camera.
So as soon as you arrived at the scene a little after 1 p.m. on the 11th, did you report to a specific person?
We reported to the detective that was on the scene. And in this case, it would have been the sergeant that was there to let us know who was lead
That was Sergeant
at that
Thompson.
time. I'm sorry?
Is that Sergeant Thompson?
Sergeant Kroll.
Sergeant Thompson there?
I do not have him on my report, but that does not mean he wasn't there. I do not recall.
And were you given the job as lead technician?
Yes.
Did you direct the other technicians with respect to specific duties?
Yes.
Was great care taken by you and the technicians to preserve the scene?
Yes.
When you observed an object on the ground or in the area, you made a determination to preserve that, whether it looked like it was evidentiary or not?
If it looked like that we needed to collect it, then yes, we.
For example, if there was trash there, you would have a tendency to collect that, because it might be evidence?
Yes.
You're not going to leave anything behind at the scene.
Correct.
Let me ask you about the change that you recovered.
Mm-hmm.
You said you had recovered some coins.
Yes.
They were in the victim's front right pocket.
Right.
Took the coins back to the property room.
Yeah, I deposited them in the property room. Yes.
And you photographed the coins.
Yes.
You preserved the coins that way.
Right. Once we were.
Photographed.
Right.
And you said then they went into a bank account.
That is what the property room protocol is. Yes.
Is that understanding you say once it's determined that the coins didn't have any evidentiary value, you put it in the bank account. Who determined that the coins didn't have any evidentiary value?
Myself and the detective had a discussion over it.
detective was?
Detective Russ.
So at some point in time, he became the lead detective on the case?
Yes.
And did that time occur while you were at the scene?
I can't recall when that occurred. I just know that we were told that he was lead. So,
When you were talking about processing these 4 items, the latent prints,
yes.
you gave some information about the process that you used to try to obtain prints.
Yes.
And that was based on the learning you had in your schooling to be a technician?
Yes.
That's what you were told.
That's the training that I received. Yes.
And you don't read fingerprints, do you?
I do not read them, no.
The police department does have somebody that is an expert who can compare prints and make conclusions about prints, whether they implicate a person.
Yes, we have a latent print examiner.
Since you didn't recover any prints, there was nothing to send to the latent print examiner.
Correct.
And then when you process the 4 items for latents, are you doing a visual examination to look and see if there's the appearance of a print? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, once the process has been performed.
And then when you talked about the possibility there might be multiple prints distorting one, are you telling the ladies and gentlemen of the jury there were no prints at all? Or are you saying that there were no distinguishable prints that you could visually see?
There were no distinguishable prints that I could visibly see to submit them to the examiner.
So when you're at the scene and you look for prints, certainly if you find prints, that would be evidence.
Yes.
And if there's no prints, there's nothing that a examiner can compare if you don't have a print to compare a known print to.
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Okay, if there's no print, it's not going to do any good to send something off to a fingerprint examiner because there's nothing he can compare his known print to.
Well, I would have nothing to send to him.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. But there is other evidence that may not be visible to the naked eye. And that would be DNA evidence.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And you're very aware that certain substances might be contained on an item of evidence that might contain DNA.
Yes.
And would you be concerned about the water bottle, for example, that might contain DNA evidence?
The water bottle was unopened, so on the lid, possibly not, but
What about the other items? The cigarillo pack was unopened? It was open, excuse me.
Right,
There
yeah.
weren't any usually, a pack like that would have 2 cigarillos and small cigars in it.
correct.
And that would be something of interest to you to send off to the lab to determine whether it was DNA recovered or not.
Yes, possibly.
And did you talk to the detective about what items should be sent to the crime lab to look for DNA?
Yes, we did.
And you all reached a consensus on what should go and what shouldn't go?
Correct.
And arrangements were made to send items to the crime lab
Yes.
for testing.
Yes.
Those were processed and the results were returned to the detective.
Yes.
You weren't called to videotape any other location?
No, I wasn't.
You weren't asked to go to the house of the victim and take video or take photographs that day?
No, I was not the technician who did that.
And did somebody do that day or a later day?
I'm not sure exactly what day, just because I wasn't the technician on it, so.
And what you testified about in your direct testimony, is that the sum total of your duties that you performed in this case?
Yes, the collection and processing of evidence and photographing and videotaping. Is that your answer, your question? Yes.
And I had a question about the video. It looked a little, not grainy, but it looked a little distorted. When I was looking at it, it looked like it had little rectangles. It was difficult. And what I want to ask you, was there any high resolution video available that the video could have been
I'm really not sure about that answer.
What the jury saw was the best video, the clearest video that you had.
Yes, that was the video without it being altered.
There was no way to enhance it or sharpen it or make
No.
Okay. When you were looking actually for blood evidence there at the scene.
That was one of the things I was looking for, yes.
Blood is important at the scene of the crime.
Yes.
Preserve the key. And one of the things you do is you can collect that blood as you talked about and send it to the crime lab.
Yes.
And the crime lab can do blood grouping analysis.
Developing a profile.
Well, they can do blood grouping analysis to determine whether it's A, B, O, or whatever. Can they not?
That would have to be a question for them. I'm sure they can, yes, but I'm not sure if that's what they do today.
I'm just asking you if they can do that. You know.
I don't know.
And they can determine the DNA, if they have something to compare the blood with. They can make a comparison between no blood sample and the blood that you recover.
Yes.
When you saw the blood, did you notice that there was a lot of spatter pretty much in all directions?
Yes.
Little droplets of blood
Yes.
all around the top part of the victim.
Around the body, yes.
And even though it seemed obvious to you, I'm assuming that you thought that that blood came from the victim, nevertheless you collected it to make sure, right?
Yes.
I mean, theoretically, it could have been a perpetrator's blood.
Possibly.
And you don't want to make any judgments on that. You want to just collect everything that's there
Correct.
and send it off for examination.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Read right.
No, sir.
Any questions from the jury? Ms. Gutterman? Okay, write it down for me. I can have the attorneys up here. Couple of questions. One of them was redundant, was asked twice. One I can't ask. What size were the sweatpants? And you can, whether you refer to your log or to the exhibit.
Okay. The size of the sweatpants was a large.
Time arrived stated 2:15, then 1:20 was stated. So if you can clear that up.
I received the call at 2:15, and I arrived on scene at 2:48, approximately.
Okay. Any other questions? May we release Ms. Gutterman? Defense team. Thank you very much. You're free to go. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take our mid-morning restroom break. Remember your admonition. If you'll just hang out, wait a minute before you leave. Don't discuss the case among yourselves with anybody else. Be ready to come back in 15 minutes at 10:45. All rise for the departing train.
All rise for the jury.
have a question